you considered the messages your outfits send? What do you think your clothes say about you? See, style is about the clothes, but it's not really about the clothes. Every day you make choices about what you're going to wear, but what are you communicating? Welcome to Above and Beyond Style. I'm your host, Maria DiLorenzo, and in 2019, I founded MFD Style, where I provide a unique, intuitive approach to personal styling for those ready to embrace a more meaningful look. With this podcast, I'll uncover key elements of where spirituality, psychology, and style intersect, revealing how you can make intentional wardrobe choices that reflect who you really are. So let me ask you, are you ready to transform into your authentic self? Then it's time. Come with me on this journey, and together we'll take your style above and beyond style. Hey everybody, welcome back to Above and Beyond Style. This is season 5. Well, we're talking about some big 5 change energy and all the wonderful things that have started to kind of unravel in a good way around learning and understanding what this number 5 means in the sequence of 1, 2, 3, 4. As I see numbers, and I am really starting to play around with what is the right next step. And so this season has hopefully started to give you some ideas around how taking these, what I would call just micro steps. We're not talking about the big grand gestures here. We're talking about small little steps that we might take to kind of make a bigger impact in our lives. And of course, we're going to talk about this within the context of style and give you some hopefully practical ideas to be able to walk away with to implement in your own life and in your own style journey as we're all on it together. I'm very happy to welcome back my conversation partner from season 4, Dr. Melissa Carrick. Missy, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you.
So fun to have yet another opportunity to connect with you and to have these conversations. And as I said early on in this season, Missy will be coming in and out, and we've got some really fun stories and topics to share with you. And I was very happy to bring her into the flow of season 5 because she was actually a really important partner as I was starting to interpret and talk about season 5. I thought maybe it would be helpful for our listeners to hear a little bit of this story, Missy, that we have been kind of working on what season 5 might look like for a while. And I was in this kind of stuck place about how to sort of transition from 4 to 5, some of the newness of season 4 that we were talking about, riding those waves of change, and that whole surfing metaphor, which of course you can so beautifully respond to and connect with. And being able to sort of see the larger picture of where change is very active in both of our lives. And we are still kind of in the process of responding to change, learning what it really means for us. And again, going back to the theme of this particular season, what are those right next steps that we might take along the journey? So I was struggling a bit with how to get this off the ground and to kind of conceptualize how season 5 might come together. And I remember I was on a call with you, Missy. We were chatting. I was in the Target parking lot, as I often am, because I do love Target and I'm there a lot. And I was talking to Missy, and I was talking to her about this concept around signs, and then I keep seeing this 1234, and then it really meant for me to take the right next step, to do whatever the next thing is that feels right. Again, not this big, grand, sweeping gesture, but it could be something small. And that's where Missy was like, well, yeah, it's step number 5, number 5 in the sequence. And it was the light went off. And I wanted to acknowledge that with you and for you, because it was oh yeah, I hadn't really thought about number 5. And once I started digging into the number 5, it was all this stuff started to come together for me. So first of all, I want to say thank you to you for that.
For sure.
And secondly, I want to be able to ask you, when we talk about signs and just the concept of sort of looking at things in the natural order or in our lives. I'm curious if signs resonate for you, if that's a place where you might find information or maybe connect even with your own spiritual practice.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, where else is, and we'll use the G word, where else is God or spirit, or as you referenced, whatever we want to call that thing that is greater than us. How else would that thing communicate with us than through the natural world, the world around us, be it people or birds or rainbows or whatever it is for you? I think really it's that invitation to notice and to start to pay attention. And naysayers, as you referenced, may say, "Oh, well, it's just you see what you look for. You buy a certain type of car and you see it on the road." Well, that's true. There's a part of your brain that actually gets clued into that and starts to look for it. And it started to notice just what shows up. How does it show up? Where does it show up? So for me, it really is that invitation to notice um, what's what's the direction that's opening up for me.
Yeah, and that direction, I think, for how this is all unfolding is the thing that is starting to kind of, like you said, open up and to learn the language of what these opening up signs are has been really fun. I mean, it's been one of those places where I think you can sort of put your attention and say, huh, okay, I wonder what that's all about. And I talked about this before about like just getting curious about that seems to be showing up quite a, often and few, and I'm wondering what that's trying to tell me or say. And then giving yourself that space to sit with that a little bit and sort of see what rises. So I'm wondering, do you have anything in your own life that you feel like maybe that's your sign or something that shows up for you?
Yeah, that's a couple. It's such an interesting question because there's a few things, and I'll speak first to um, being very embodied and being someone who works with the body. I started to realize that the nudge for me, I need to pay attention if I have tears or if I have laughter or both at the same time, because that to me is usually a sign that I am on the right track. And it's sort of the internalization of that sign. Numbers haven't been quite as resonant to me, although my lucky number is 22, always has been since I was little. And even with, there's a woman that I'm working with right now, getting some coaching with her, and right off the bat, she started talking about number 22, and to me, that was like a ding, 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 like, oh, okay, like I am on the right track. Because it was a discovery call when she first mentioned that of, okay, well, we're going to be doing some work together. Um, I frequently have woken up at the same exact time. And sometimes I can't always interpret those numbers. I started to pay more attention as we've talking and also reading the signs book that you referenced in the first episode. Um, I started paying more attention to numbers and trying to look at what they mean. I was waking up. I don't remember exactly what time, but whatever it was, the numbers added up to 77, and my mom is turning 77. I was like, oh, okay. What is it? I started to pay attention and ask myself, what is it that I need to pay attention to with my mom? Oh, okay, maybe I need to actually check on her a little bit more, see how she's doing. I had a similar thing when my dad was actually diagnosed with cancer, and I kept waking up at this same time of night. And I would wake up with a start and I'd be thinking of my dad. And I was really afraid something was going to happen to him. It's interesting. And again, it was an invitation to just be in more contact with him, more regular contact. And at the time I thought, okay, this is like my dad's spirit. I don't know if that's too woo woo out there, but this is my dad's spirit trying to get my attention or trying to say goodbye. And it's interesting, probably 4 months later, 5 months later, my mom actually had a massive stroke that has been debilitating. And it's interesting, I stopped waking up at that time that when my mom had the stroke, like that, right after that, stopped waking up. And I mean, maybe I didn't get the wrong sign, quote unquote, but I often think, oh, I just didn't fully interpret that sign. I was actually getting the message about one of my parents. It just, I didn't have the right parent. My cognitive brain got involved.
Yeah, these are such beautiful examples of what some people might just call coincidence, right? And I suppose there's I'm not here to debate it, to be candid. I'm just here to say that I think there's something more to it than coincidence.
Well, and I love that word because anytime I hear it, my mind, I say, ha, two things that coincide, right? It's the coincidence. And okay, maybe that's accidental. And what if it's not? Let me actually observe these coincidences. Like I was just traveling back from Costa Rica and I've been looking at different ways to make offerings for my business slash like really if I say business that's not actually really the truth is what I'm looking for is a way to express my gifts in the world and what I do and share it with people in a different way. And one of the things that I've actually been thinking about is offering retreats, and this has been in the back of my mind for a while. I've been kind of noodling on it, and anyway, when we were there I met two separate people who were giving retreats, one of whom is a woman who works also with the body doing somatic work. And she happens to be from the next town down from where our place at the beach is. My home break is Asti Island. She's from Chincoteague. And it's interesting. She was there in this town I've been visiting forever, giving retreats, doing what she does with people. And she gives these retreats in different locations. And we've randomly met because her fiance knows someone who my husband knows very closely. They're both very close friends and didn't know each other. So within 10 minutes of him meeting the two of them, she said, "Oh, you want to have dinner tonight?" And we had this fabulous dinner. We laughed and laughed, and there's all these similarities. So I thought, okay. And then it happened again. I met someone else who's there giving retreats. And then on the ride home from Costa Rica, the guy sitting next to me just turned to me and, hey, what are you doing in Costa Rica? And then he told me what he's doing. He had moved to Costa Rica to lead at a retreat center.
I
So
mean,
coinciding, three separate events. Random coincidence? For me, I think not.
yeah. And I think that that sense of not trying to grasp at meaning, but to start to see some of these patterns. And I think that's why numbers are something that comes up very easily for me because I'm a very visual person. So I'm not surprised at all that like I would get repeating signs, if you will, in a way that I will see it, right? And so in this instance of the repeating kind of retreat work, kind of noodling on that, I do genuinely believe these are affirmations or sort of nudges that are helping you along. It's not saying, Missy, you need to go out and do retreats. This is a definitive thing for you. It's going to be the right step. It just means pay attention to this. Go down that path. See where that road takes you. Because maybe as you go down that path in retreats, it unveils something else that is supposed to be for you, right? And I think that's the part of interpreting some of these signs and messages for me that it's like, it's not always like the obvious thing. It may be, not against that. But sometimes the obvious thing, I think, is the way that spirit, God, universe kind of gets us to the place that they need us to be so that they can take us down the ultimate, if you will, path about what we need and want.
For sure. And it's when the brain is a little bit distracted, i.e., you find your lost earring when you're looking for your car keys.
Right.
So it's giving us something to focus on. Then the rest of the doors open up. And that idea of patterns, Maria, it's so interesting. I've been thinking a lot about vocation,
Mm.
and the idea of vocation is right, it's our calling, but the idea that vocation comes from the voice within, and it's the voice within, not the voice without, that's like, oh, you should be doing this, or this is a great way to use your gifts. It's I can't remember who said it, but it's basically where our gladness meets our ability to serve within a community.
Mm.
And so whatever we're doing, it's paying attention to the signs, paying attention to the patterns. And we can look at vocation and where we're moving in the future by sometimes looking at patterns and signs like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, be it big or small, and also looking at the pattern of our life of,
Absolutely.
oh, it's even no accident. I was thinking about this recently. I was thinking about what I wanted to be when I grew up, when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I was very sure I wanted to do three things all at once. I wanted to be a helicopter pilot, right, or helicopter driver, a firewoman, and a chiropractor. And I let go of the chiropractor somewhere in my, teens, 20, et cetera. I like let go of that. But those three things, it's like, oh, I see the pattern there of what that's emblematic of. And there's other ways that if we look at our history, we could see the evolution or the pattern that we couldn't always see when we were in it, of
Of
what
course.
that indicate, what that means.
Yeah. And this is the beautiful part of when I think you live in a space of openness and awareness and just noticing recognition of the pattern, the invitation, all of these pieces. And this is so much about when I talk about personal style, this is so much about the fun and the discovery element of how this all can relate and how people can start to access like who they are and what they're about and how they feel. And some of that is right on the surface for people to access and it's really easy. And for other people, it's a bit more buried. It's been really kind of stuck or like underground from, years of other people's opinions or imprint on childhood and sort of what has happened, trauma. I mean, you've been through this umpteen times with clients in this space. And for me, it was always really interesting when I started to give the space to people to start to notice some of their own patterns, particularly around how clothing made them feel. It got to be this place where it was like, oh, I'm going to use something really ordinary here, but like when I put on the color blue, I don't know, I just sort of feel better. I feel happier. I feel softer. I feel more fluid, right? Like, and it's this interesting place to notice. And again, part of my work is just to pay attention to what people tell me and start to kind of weave together some of these patterns of like, okay, so when you see blue, again, I'm using this as a silly little analogy, but like, what do you think of? What does that make you associate with? Oh, I think of the ocean. I think of water. I think of being at peace, right? So you start to understand how everyone has sort of made these connections. The synapses in our brain have started to make these connections with different colors or experiences. And of course, that translates then into the clothing that we put on our bodies.
May I share, Maria, about recently? This is so good because you're expert level. I mean, clearly you do this professionally, but expert level at really combining and noticing and then inviting your clients to go, well, how's this make you feel? So I sent you this picture the other day of this. Oh gosh. So by the way, I'm 5'2", so I'm fairly short. I'm very muscular. Um, one might say a little bit thicker. So I send you this picture of a column dress. It's a black column dress. Now, if anyone knows, column dress is like almost to the floor, maybe a couple inches above the ankle, very shapeless. And I had belted it, and it had this slit up the leg, maybe a little bit above the knee, and just asking, like, Maria, column? Like, what do you think? And your response was so brilliant. You said, well, tell me how this feels. And it gave me pause to actually take a minute and notice. And I was like, well, I like the slit up the side. It's sort of sexy. It has to be belted. Otherwise, meh. I'm like, and I really like the ease of having a not tight option to wear, but it still feels a little like, I think the word I used was momular, right?
Yes.
Which is not how I want to feel. It's great. I can only imagine your expression when you've got this text. And your response was so perfect. In fact, I'm going to read it. I just pulled it up. Um, your response was so great, very understated. Generally speaking, we don't want to feel meh about our clothes. This isn't the one, but good things to note. So here's the noticing. You wrote, check, easy dress that isn't tight. Check, a little sexy. The slit is fun on the side. You're like, this can be found. We can do this. I think both of us probably died laughing with this. And then I realized, like, wait a second. Your instruction was so clear. It was like every piece of clothing can give us information about what we do want. So taking that, I went, wait a second. All right, a little sexy, fun, and ease. That's like what I want. And then I was like, wait a second. That's actually what I want in my life is like, I think I text you that. It's like, yes, I want a little sexy, a little zoom, a little excitement, a little zzz, and then some fun and some ease. So it was such a the dress is clearly no going back. Thank you very much. Return. Yes, please. Now, what do I need to replace it? So thank you for that, by the way, on multiple fronts, multiple fronts.
And it's so funny. This happened so organically, you guys. Like we just, we were in conversation about different things as we often do. And We were talking about stuff. Missy's been looking for some pieces. So I've been helping her. So it just was really funny. It all kind of came together in this way. And I think in general that when we can ask ourselves, again, take that pause, just a hot second, the invitation of just checking in with ourselves to see sort of how something feels really can open up any number of new doors. And I mean that not just about style. I mean that could be anything in your life, right? And being able to just say like, all right, well, I have this, again, these are made up examples, but like I have this invitation to go to an event next week. And it would be good to, network and connect. And but for whatever reason, like when I think about going on this, this event, I just don't feel excited about it, or feels like it would be a little bit like I'm pushing myself to get there. And there's, maybe you can't even put your finger on the why, you feel X or Y, but it's paying attention to the emotion and the connection within ourselves for that information. And I think if we're able to do that more and more about sometimes even the most mundane things, and I'm not trying to make this like deep and complicated and hard, it's just about giving yourself the space to check in and say, I don't know, how's this going? How's this feel? That oftentimes we'll get the information that we need. And it is learning that language of your intuition. And I firmly believe then that is a connection and a channel for how we communicate and understand what the divine wants of us too. So all of this feels so relevant. And I love these moments with you, Missy, for that reason, because we can kind of laugh to ourselves like, there it is.
Ah,
Weren't
so good.
expecting that. We weren't even like queuing ourselves up for it. And
Mm,
boom, there it was, So
mm.
kudos for you, because not only did you identify what you wanted in your dresses or your clothing, but you're like, wait a second, I kind of want my life to feel like this. Boom, boom, boom. And I told her, well, go put that like on a post-it note up in your house. Like, I want it easy, I want it fun and a little sexy. So these are the things that we get to play with here. So thank you for that example.
For sure. Thank you. So great.
So while we're talking style, I wanted to play around with, again, this season, I'm trying to help us maybe make some incremental introductory changes, if you will, that might help open us up to some new ways of thinking about our style, maybe thinking about our life, but it gives us these practices of learning what it feels like to try on something different, play with something a little outside of the norm, etc. So I thought today I would talk to you about this concept. And before we really like dig into the concept, I want to first I'll name it, and then I want to give you a little bit of backstory on why I think it's important. So if you are familiar with the New York stylist and wardrobe consultant, Allison Bornstein, she kind of made like a name for herself through the pandemic. She really got big on TikTok right through the pandemic. And she'd been a stylist for many years prior to that, but really like propelled herself forward through a couple very pointed pieces of information that she was sharing on TikTok. And one of the things that Allison got very famous for was this concept around the wrong shoe theory. And perhaps you've seen it. If you Google it, there'll be all sorts of articles and things about it. So I encourage you to do it. We're going to talk about the specific theory, but the reason why the wrong shoe theory caught my eye and caught my attention was about the word wrong. And I want to dig into that first before we talk about the theory and all the fun things that come with that style. First of all, I don't think it's a big secret. I have not been shy about this on the podcast that I'm like a recovering type A person. I really love order, routine, predictability, and I am very much learning how to let go of a lot of those patterns because I've learned that it's really held me back. It's created a very harsh, judgmental voice in my own head that has been really difficult at times to overcome and to really let go of. And as I'm learning, so much of my work is around self-presentation and that connection and expression with self-love, that it's important for me to learn to practice this self-love thing. And it's an ongoing journey and one that I'm not shy about saying I'm still working on. It's perhaps a lifelong thing that I'm going to be confronted with. And I think for me, there is a really deep seated, and maybe this is resonant for you, but a very deep seated uh, and clear distinction between what is right and what is wrong. And I don't even really know where that originated for me, if that's from past lives to my childhood. My parents were very clear and firm, and I think their discipline was always very steady, but I don't feel like I had this like harsh, like, no, Maria, don't do this. Yes, you've got to do that. It was almost as if I was born that way. And in some ways, I feel this very deep connection and a very entrenched and rooted connection with making sure I do the right thing and not the wrong thing. And I don't know if anybody out there can like feels that or knows what that feels like. And it can be debilitating at times because, again, in a world where I am making some very deliberate changes and moving into some phases in my life that are unknown, there is a very loud egoic voice connected to this: don't take the wrong step. What if you make the wrong step? What if you do the wrong thing? And that voice of judgment and criticism can get quite loud for me. And I have really had to work on challenging that voice and being like a little bullyish with it, to be like, wait a second, what if there isn't a wrong choice here? What if I'm not even capable of making a wrong choice? What if every choice is right? It just takes you down a different path of learning. And it gives you opportunities to look at things you wouldn't have looked at before. And so there's really never a wrong step. And so it's been this challenging constantly. And I mean this truthfully, that like it really feels like the last, especially 5 years, again, the number five, that I've had to come up against this notion of right and wrong in my own head, and the fear that is attached to making the wrong quote unquote step. And like, what is that about? And why can't I just be okay with if I make the quote unquote wrong step? So what? Am I going to blow up and explode? No. Is the world going to blow up and explode? No. Giving yourself that permission to sort of see a more gentle, less binary, if you will, outcome than doing something the right or the wrong way. Now, Missy, I want to pause there for a second, because this concept of right or wrong, I don't know if it's resonant for you, but it's been something, as I've said, very prominent for me. And as you're amidst your own change, I'm curious about, how do you feel about sort of the right next step or the wrong next step?
That's so interesting, Maria. Thank you. Even I'm just getting this as you were talking, listening and looking at myself. I would not say that I historically am someone who is trying to do the right thing all the time. I mean, when I look at my life, it's like, no, I definitely have not done sort of the conventional thing in a lot of ways. And I've just been like, oh, what feels right? What feels right in my heart? Like going to grad school. I didn't know what I was going to do. This is pre-chiropractic school. I just knew that it was the right step. And I do think that as I have maybe become more in the world of adulting, and there's more at stake, there's more gravity, I started making choices maybe less in my heart. And so that has found me in a place, and it's still operative, but my head has gotten more involved. And so my head being more involved has created this really subtle, not loud binary system of right and wrong, and trying to find the path for me of like, okay, what is next? And this feeling of gravitational, there's a huge gravity to, if I take this step, well, then what are all the other things that are going to happen if I do this? So taking a sabbatical for a long time was like in my mind, on my heart, oh my God, but if I do that, what's going to happen to my practice? What's going to happen to, all these people? And finally getting to the point where my heart got louder and louder and having to do it. So I'm aware that there is this paradigm that there's probably multiple wrong steps, and that there's probably a more limited amount of right steps. This is my version of it. a more limited amount of right steps or the most right step. So, okay, for my bigger purpose, higher calling. And maybe I shared this on last season. I don't remember, but something that I've been turning over a lot that has helped me with this. You said, what if every choice is right and there's not a wrong step? So for me, my version of that is a Sufi expression of the rock that hit you couldn't have missed you. So it's this idea of like, oh, well, maybe I'm actually getting there and the twists and turns and that question of, well, what feels right? So I don't have a fear of doing it fully wrong, but trying to go, well, what's the most right thing? Definitely creates a little bit of paralysis for me.
Yeah, and that's such a fair emotion when it comes with doing right or wrong, the paralysis, like, and I think that stuckness,
Mm,
um, many people can probably resonate with, especially when you're confronted with a decision or in a decision-making process. And I would say that it's continually learning to release. For me, it was always about the judgment that was tied to
mm,
quote unquote the wrong. And even just earlier this very week, so just to normalize this for anybody, if you think I'm like so far down this path and I've overcome all the things, this very week I was on the phone with, we have a mutual friend, Lisa, and I was chatting with her. I was in the process, I've been moving different homes and locations as I'm kind of on my way to whatever my quote unquote permanent home will be. And I was feeling this strange emotion around like, what if I haven't done this right? What if by living with different friends over the course of this last year and not having quote unquote my own space wasn't the right step? Like, what if I should have just gotten a rental that was on my own and done XYZ? And it was this very fascinating narrative. I was taking myself down this whole path of like, what if I'm doing this wrong? And it was like this very critical, harsh place of anytime I've been in transition. I think this is human and normal that you sort of wonder, like, did I do that right? Was that kind of how that needed to go? And I'm a very evaluative person. I'm someone that is very self-reflective and introspective, and I try to pay attention to like, how did that go? Especially if it impacts other people. That's another story for another day. But it also feels like because so many of my life choices, especially over the last year, have impacted other people. It hasn't just been my decision. It's been about how I've been invited into homes and allowed to be living there in this space while I've kind of been navigating, that I'm aware that like some of my choices aren't just my choices, that they've, impacted other people's lives. So I have to be careful about at the end of the day, I made a choice. And I did what with everything. I've said this many times to myself, like I made the choice with the information that I had at the time. And the information that came from me, the information that came from my God, the information that came from my community, like the synthesis of all of that allowed me to come to a decision and I went with it. And so there is a acceptance and allowance of that choice to just be in the world. Was it the right choice? I don't know. Was it the wrong choice? I don't know. I don't have to make a qualitative judgment on it. It just was a choice. And I think that's also part of why I wanted this season to be about taking the right next step isn't always about it being right or wrong. It's just taking a step and it's keeping us in momentum and moving forward in a way that perhaps is getting us closer to the thing we're supposed to be about. So this concept, I'm going to circle back to the wrong shoe theory in a second, but like the whole concept of right and wrong for me, especially for people who are thinking about their personal style, I find this a lot about, oh no, this isn't right for me, or this is not my right thing, or I'm somehow in the wrong body to be wearing XYZ. And so there's a lot of these mental patterns and beliefs and systems that I think we are all unraveling to try to get at a bit more authentic and hopefully a more gentle reaction and acceptance with sort of where we are. Any thoughts on any of that, Missy?
Yeah, so much. It's taking like right and wrong in some ways out of the lexicon, wrong shoe theory. It'll be interesting because that's such a play. We've talked about this, a play on those words. Um, and that it's using oneself for the litmus of like, well, what feels right for me? Like, oh, okay, I put on wide leg pants, like true wide leg pants. I don't feel good in them for a number of reasons. And when I look at myself, I don't feel good in them. I don't stand well in them. Um, so that's my own litmus test. And it's interesting that underneath this conversation, um, when you were saying like, kind of feeling the judgment of different decisions, or is it wrong? It's like, who's doing the judging? Is it ourselves or is it the perception? I think we all have um, different locus, like a different locus of that judgment, whether it comes from self, whether it comes from, well, this is not what women my age wear. This is not what society would have a professional wear, whatever it is. And it's interesting, if I were to be transparent about my own, when I think about my, like, well, okay, I want to take the most right step. It's interesting. I've boxed myself in by my understanding of the divine. And I'm sort of surprised about that in this moment of like, well, what would be the highest expression of my gifts? That's what I really want to do. How do I, how do I do that? And the judger, quote unquote, would be the divine or God in that thing. It's
Yeah.
not anyone else. I don't hold myself to anyone else's standards in that way. And I'm sort of surprised in this moment, literally, as we're talking, like, oh, that's not, I mean, I was just sharing with you about
Yeah.
my image of God, actually. And so it's interesting what I shared with you previously, and then the dissonance of, oh, well, I'm trying to quote unquote get it most right for what is my highest calling, aka my like divine purpose of why I'm here.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of gravity unnecessarily that I've got to get it right or else I'm getting it wrong for this lifetime. Whereas, don't I trust that I'm going to be guided by the signs, guided by the invitations that show up in my life?
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Thanks for that, for helping me see that in this moment.
Yeah. And thanks for articulating it that way, because I think, again, it kind of reinforces this. I don't know that there's a wrong step here.
Mm-mm.
And every step you take with good intention and with alignment and purpose and heart centered, right? That it's ultimately going to take us down the right path, quote unquote, right path. And
Right on.
right, so this is why it's fun. And now let's dig into this wrong shoe theory. All these poor listeners are probably like, can you get to the style stuff already? No. But it's important that I want to unpack some of these things, because this is why some of these quote unquote right steps might be the thing that helps unlock something for you. And it is in oftentimes like digging in a little bit that I find I get curious and I have more fun with some of these concepts. So anyway, let's talk about the wrong shoe theory. Allison Bornstein. I'm not sure how you pronounce her last name, so forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it. She came up with this wrong shoe theory. And essentially, just to kind of give a synopsis of what it is, it's the idea of adding unexpected footwear to outfits to create kind of a unique, non-basic look, right? So it involves picking the most unexpected shoe to finish off a look, giving it more personality. So let's just paint a picture of like we're putting on a really kind of basic classic outfit, right? So we've got like a white button down blouse, we've got some blue denim jeans, we've got a black belt. Okay. So, in kind of a traditional, easy, clear way, you might say, great, okay, I have a black belt on. I'm going to go for a black loafer or a black ballet flat or a black sandal, right? Okay, great. There is nothing inherently wrong with how that looks or what that's about and how that might feel for you. But Allison sort of posed this question about like, what if it gave more authenticity to the look if you sort of paired something that was a little untraditional, out of the ordinary, non-basic to it, to give it really the full kind of style and vibe and look that you wanted it to? So instead of pairing with the black flat or the loafer or the sandal, maybe you go with like a neon sneaker or something that's got like a leopard print, or there's something that, again, it's this like non-traditional, kind of unique. And I don't know what it was, but the internet like exploded over this idea and the concept. And I love it. I mean, it's really basic. There's nothing really novel about it, but it just allows you to kind of rethink, if I dress in kind of a traditional classic way, can I show more personality? And she's using shoes. You could do this with anything, to be honest, but let's just stick with the wrong shoe theory. So I think it's important for our listeners to know this about you, Missy, that I think a very important part of your personal style is about the connection with shoes. And I loved having this conversation with you, because this girl, everybody, this girl loves herself a good, cool shoe. And so talk to me when you hear about the wrong shoe theory. Like, what does that do for you? What are you thinking
Oh
about?
my gosh. Well, it's right on is what I hear. And it makes me smile from the inside out. A la like, hey, how's it make me feel?
Totally.
Definitely right away, full body smile of like, yes, finally. And I love especially, um, I love it's something I've actually done for a while of a classic outfit, nothing, I sort of have a prepster background and then wearing something totally funky for a shoe or something really fun for a shoe. Like I think the first time I probably experimented with this way earlier. I mean, I had some god awful shoes that were pretty horrendous in terms of trying to be creative or being creative, not even
Yeah.
trying. But I love wearing like a plaid button down, classic plaid button down jeans, and then glitter gold high tops. I have these
Yes.
awesome glitter gold high top Vans. Love it.
Yeah. And you have such a great, part of Missy's style. We've talked about this in previous episodes. She's got a little rocker to her. There's a little rock chic going on there for her. So she loves a good sparkle, a little bit of glitter, maybe some neon, something really fun and
Oh,
funky. And I think that is just a really fun way that you can use, and all of us can use, this concept of the wrong shoe theory, because ultimately it's just to push beyond kind of whatever that first instinct is to wear. Like, oh, okay, yeah, wear the black sandal. Well, wait a second. What would the quote unquote wrong shoe be? Like, where would it take me to a new place if I tried out something different, a little out of the ordinary? And I also really love this because and she talks about this in her theory about like, it doesn't require you to buy anything new. Like, it's just go back into your closet, go see something that kind of stands out and put it, shake it up, put it on, see how it feels. So it doesn't have to be quite so formulaic. Like, you can play around with this in a way that has a bit more personality and connection to the idea. So when Missy and I were working together early on, we did a lot of that. We put together these outfits and it was like, yeah, let me put on a snakeskin sneaker, or she has a really fun neon, you have a neon thing going on. Or she has these great cowboy boots. Are they turquoise?
yeah, I have
Remind me.
turquoise cowboy boots. I have a couple pairs of cowboy boots, but the ones you're thinking of are turquoise.
Yes. So like I have this image in my head of these like really kind of cool classic, again, not ordinary, but like very classic and more traditional type of outfits. But she can pair like a really kick-ass shoe with it and have it be so much more her personal style. And I think the concept of the wrong shoe theory just kind of gave permission to like, yeah, wear the high top glitter sneaker. Go ahead and rock the thing that feels like it shouldn't go, but it actually does. And she talks about this a little bit further about like, if you're wearing kind of a classic wool trouser pant, then maybe the traditional look would be like a classic loafer, or even just a heel or a pump that you might wear kind of more on the workwear side, but instead going the other direction and maybe wearing like a leather flip-flop or one of those like dad sandals that you see everywhere now out. So it's like, it's really trying to like push the envelope of where you think it would go down this one path, take it the other way and sort of see how that looks and feels. So maybe this is a small step that anybody could start to play with, especially around personal style, to give you the permission to go back into your closet, take a look at what you got going on. Maybe you need to go buy a wrong shoe. I'm not opposed to that. Like, go get something that's a little out of the ordinary, but that speaks to you, that you're like, oh, this is fun. And like would be really joyful to have in your collection, and sort of see how it could be paired with something really traditional or classic or kind of, basic, if you will, to be able to kind of get you a little cleaser to maybe feeling a little more authentic in your style. Maybe it's a little more playful. And I think that has been something that clearly a lot of people on the internet are like all about this. And here Missy was doing it all along, girlfriend. So good for you. And so for this week, everybody, that's our invitation, is to help you think a little bit more broadly about perhaps the signs and patterns that you're seeing in your life. Maybe you need to push the boundaries a little bit around what's right or wrong and go in that direction of playing with something that feels maybe a little wrong that actually could be right for not just your style, but maybe even for your life. And I think for us, as Missy and I are on this fun journey together, we hope to inspire and bring that to you. So Missy, thanks for joining us today. It was always great to have you be back on the podcast.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. So fun to be with you.
So guys, we will see you all very soon on the next one. Thanks so much for listening today. If you enjoyed what you've heard, I would appreciate you taking the time to leave a review on the podcasting platform you're using, and share this episode with others who you think might really enjoy these conversations about personal style. For more information all about MFD Style services, you can find me on the web at mfdstyle.com, on Instagram at mfd_style, where I post almost 5 days a week, or send me an email at maria@mfdstyle.com. I also have a weekly email I send to subscribers, so I will include the link to that sign up in the show notes. So until next time, friends, remember to love yourself and then love yourself some more.